This is Becky Carlin, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar, along with Shannon Fern. I have a couple of housekeeping items to cover before we get started today. First, we will be recording this webinar, and it will be available beginning tomorrow morning on LiveWell Colorado's website. To access the recording, simply visit about.livewellcolorado.org, visit the toolbox, and select Webinars in the toolbox menu. Second, we're also going to have some time for Q&As at the end of the webinar. If possible, please let us know to whom you are directing your question. To ask a question, you can simply type your question into the question box on your control screen panel and press enter. So now I'd like to turn things over to Lisa Walvord, Vice President of Policy for LiveWell Colorado.
Thank you very much, Becky, and thank you to everybody who's on the phone today, and thank you to all of our presenters. Our objectives for today's call are to provide an overview of the school district review tool, to share with you how districts can use it, and most excitingly, to share some real-life examples of identifying and building strategic opportunities for farm-to-school programs, and then to offer some technical assistance, resources, and suggestions on how to get involved. So our agenda closely follows those objectives. We're going to hear from Lynn Kathleen, who will give us an introduction to Farm to School and an orientation to the school district review tool. And then we're going to get real-life stories from Shelley Allen from the St. Vrain Valley School District, Mark Lahr from North Cojeos School District, and Kara Sample from the Weld County School District 6. And then we do have a call to action. So this isn't just about learning something, but we do hope that you will take something away from this and know how to proceed forward. So we always like to share folks' pictures of who our different presenters are. There is one person I did mention, Wendy Peters will be on to help with Q&A and provide some technical assistance as well. So with that, I am pleased to hand it over to Lynn Kathleen. Lynn provides staffing services to the state's Farm to School Task Force, and she's also been a key contributor to a lot of the work and partner to the work that we do at LiveWell Colorado. And she's also one of the partners in the Colorado Farm to School project.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. We're going to start today by going through what we call a tool that we've named Choose Your Own Farm to School Adventure. And this is a tool that will help schools review their interest and readiness for doing a farm to school program. The tool is a PDF form with interactive content, and it's available on the Colorado Farm to School website, which we will give you that link at the end of our presentation. The tool is appropriate for all types of districts. We recognize that districts vary in size, location, socioeconomic composition, facilities, and access to local fresh food. And it's all of these unique factors of your school district that can affect the implementation of a farm to school program. This tool helps you sort out how to move forward given your unique circumstances. There are 9 sections that will provide a systematic way for you to collect information about your school district that's going to be relevant to implementing a farm to school program. This is what we would call really a self-portrait of your district, and it will help you identify your opportunities and your challenges. And it also will provide you with resources to help you figure out how to move forward. Let me tell you how it works. First of all, there's really 2 components to it. The reason we call it a tool rather than simply a form is because there are these resource links that are embedded throughout it that direct you to websites, reports, and other documents that are going to be relevant to the section within which that area is highlighted. And these highlights are in these call-out boxes, and at the beginning of each of the call-out boxes is a little green apple. And so that's where you know you can find the resources. The tool is also a PDF form, and that means that it has boxes where you can literally type in your answers. So while you could print it off and handwrite on it, which you're welcome to do, you can also just leave it on your computer and fill it out that way. Now, for the rest of this, I'm going to walk us through very brief examples of each of the sections. And I'm going to start actually with Section 2 and then go to Section 9. Section 2 focuses on the types of meal programs your school or district offer and the amount of revenue that's generated through these meal programs. This section is most useful to districts who are interested in better understanding the revenue streams that will affect their farm-to-school options, or they've committed to starting a farm-to-school program and they really need to examine their budget and figure out where can they find their money to do local purchasing. Here you can see some examples about the district's participation in the National School Lunch Program and their free and reduced participation rates. In this part of Section 2, it asks you about the summer meal program. If your school participates in a summer meal program, this is a really great opportunity for integrating local fresh produce. At the very bottom, you can see that little green apple, and this particular one takes you to a 2011 publication on how you can use your local foods in your after-school and summer nutrition programs. And while some sections are focused on what I would call hard data, like the number of meals served and your participation rates in various programs, other sections, like this Section 3, dive into helping you better understand your motivation and interest in farm-to-school programs. At the same time that you're looking at these kinds of questions, it helps to educate you about what the farm-to-school programs really entail, because it actually is about much more than simply bringing local produce into your schools. And this tool will help you identify those opportunities. Building a farm-to-school effort often requires the support from various stakeholders too. So it's really helpful to consider who are your allies and who are those people that really aren't on board yet. They either just don't know anything about it or they've even been disinterested when you've tried to talk to them about it. And then finding out who your allies are, really considering them, gives you an opportunity to call them up and plan for how you can move ahead and really push your farm-to-school program through in a productive and efficient way. It's also helpful to consider the barriers you're facing when you're sourcing local food. So here is a question that's an example of the types of barriers some school districts may face. This question actually asks you to rank order those barriers from 1 to 5 because we recognize that it's important to really hone in on what are the biggest barriers. And once you figure that out, that's where you start. And you start to solve those barriers that really are the large ones that are preventing you from moving forward or enhancing your farm-to-school efforts. Section 4 is a pretty long section, actually. It goes for 5 pages, and it goes in depth on the district's food procurement and delivery practices. And it's really most useful to those districts that are ready to begin buying local and want to know how to incorporate it into their existing procurement system. It's going to help you identify the district people to be involved and who makes the purchasing decision, who manages food service operations, and it goes on into other kinds of local sourcing questions. It's an important section for any school district that is going to be doing farm-to-school. Section 5 covers issues related to food distribution and school facilities. This helps you determine the infrastructure that's available in your district and to receive, handle, and process fresh foods. This one is really the most useful for districts that are ready to determine whether or where they have facilities and processes needed for storing, transporting, and preparing fresh foods. Section 6 addresses the personnel skills needed to implement a farm-to-school program. It's really useful for understanding that current skill level of food service staff and potential culinary training that will be needed. One of the resources in this section, as you can see in that little apple, is highlighting the Culinary Camps, which is a scratch cook training program that's provided by LiveWell, Colorado. At the heart of it, farm-to-school meals need menus that use recipes designed for seasonal availability of their local products. So this section is really useful to those districts that are considering how to introduce and incorporate fresh produce into their meal and snack options. In the review tool, you'll see that there's a link to Massachusetts, which has some lovely recipes. But the other thing that's really great is that more and more districts are rolling out recipes, and you're going to hear from 3 of them today. And they have their own recipes that I'm sure they would love to share with you. There's many recipes that you can find on how to use Colorado fresh produce. Section 8 is a part that helps you engage your students to both figure out how to get them to eat the new foods that you want to serve and how to use them as your promoters and allies in the effort to change up your food to healthier, fresh food. And then finally, Section 9 is all about your wellness policies. And working with your school or district wellness committee to incorporate healthy eating into the wellness policy is a good way to formalize your farm-to-school efforts. The information collected in this section can provide the policy justification for supporting those farm-to-school efforts, and it will also help you identify who are the people and how can you use your wellness committee to really support the changes you're making in your cafeteria. So that was a quick whirlwind tour through the Farm to School, Choose Your Own Farm to School Adventure School District Review tool. Boy, that's a mouthful. You can find that at the coloradofarmtoschool.org website, and at the end of this webinar, I'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Lynn. I hope that everybody on the phone realizes how comprehensive and how rich of a resource is being provided. And don't get too overwhelmed. It was a lot that Lynn just shared, but I think that's some of the beauty of it, too, that you can start anywhere, that you really go into what is relevant to you. You can start where you are. So if you're at the very beginning thinking about it, go to where it's comfortable. If you've already gotten started with something, my guess is that some of the challenges that you're facing might resonate with what you just heard from Lynn, so you can start to find ways in which to engage. But I do encourage everybody to check it out, and do start capturing your questions. You can go ahead and submit those in the question box, I believe, and we'll be sure to be ready to answer those at the end. So with that, we're going to pass it on now to our real-life stories and some examples of what's really happening on the ground in Colorado. And so first we have Kara Sample, who is a registered dietitian and is the administrative dietitian for Weld County School District 6. Kara.
Well, thank you, Lisa, and good afternoon to everyone out there. So today my goal is to briefly provide you with a little bit of history related to our Farm to School program here in Greeley, as well as, just touch on a few of the sections of the Choose Your Own Adventure tool that Lynn just reviewed with us. So with that being said, let's dive right into some history. As you can see here, our program really got started in 2008. We began with purchasing just cherry tomatoes from one local farm. In 2009, we continued to take baby steps to incorporate local produce, and we added a few, some different produce items to our local purchases list. During the 2010-2011 school year, our program really expanded. And at this time, purchasing and the bid process in particular became a main focus. So I'm actually going to expand upon that in the next few slides. But just to finish off here, we are now in our fourth year of Farm to School, and we really just continue to learn and grow. So let's take a peek at this next slide here. I have just an illustration that really provides a great picture of how our program has grown over time. Only a few $100s, looking at that first year, and up until last year, about $56,000 for the 10-11 school year. So as I mentioned previously, that is the year where we really started looking at the procurement piece, which just so happens to be Section 4 of the tool. So let's take a little deeper look at that. So during the spring of 2010, we worked with St. Vrain Valley School District, who is also a part of this webinar today, and Poudre Valley School District to request bid pricing from our local growers. Our goal was really to create, for lack of a better term, a more formal relationship with those growers. Essentially, we provided them with estimated quantities for items that we expected to purchase. We also gave them the pricing that we were at the time currently paying our conventional produce suppliers so that they could, be competitive with that. And then, of course, we requested a bid from them. So you'll notice here on this slide, I've highlighted the estimated quantities to purchase. I feel that this is very important to mention because this information allows local growers to really plan for what they're going to plant and harvest. It also provides them with a sense of partnership. that the school district is really agreeing to follow through with purchases. So local growers that decided to submit a bid, they provided to us, of course, their produce list, what they expected to harvest, pricing, and then quantities, how much they expected to yield. So in our experience, the bid process really provided for something a little bit more concrete between the school district and the growers. Like I said earlier, something really to develop that partnership on. So of course, after bids are received and produce is purchased, you really do have to have a plan for utilizing those farm-to-school items on your menu. So just relating this back to the tool, this is actually section 7 of the tool. And the menu is another very important piece of the farm-to-school puzzle. And planning is an absolute must. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about planning. As far as timing for us, the bid was released and finalized in the spring. And then our menus for the fall, we really concentrate on over the summer months. So for the last 2 years, I have developed spreadsheets which serve as our plan of execution for our farm-to-school purchases. So here on this slide, you actually see a little snippet of what this looks like for our district. I include information such as the produce item, what farm is it coming from, when will it be utilized, how much will we need, what exactly is it going to serve as on the menu, and any other additional pertinent information. So I feel like something like this really becomes very important for, not only the farmer, for the menu planner, for the purchasing person within the district or the buyer, the nutrition staff out at the schools, really everyone involved in the process. And I really think it helps to keep everyone on the same page. So now that I've talked about the importance of planning, I'm going to go against my word just a tiny bit and also talk about being flexible, also very important. As we all know, Mother Nature happens, and you always need to have a plan B. It's very important that produce items can still be purchased from a conventional produce supplier. In case crops are lost to bad weather, you need to know that you can still get those items from somewhere else. On the flip side, also still flexibility. There's been many times when growers have contacted us with, the option of purchasing surplus items. So being able to incorporate those surplus items is very important as well, and it's really a win-win. On this next slide here, the picture I have actually is a perfect example of being open to surplus, and it actually depicts a situation that we had. We were contacted by a local grower that had a ton of extra sweet corn, and they gave us the opportunity to purchase that. So we did. We actually worked with a student group here within our district, and we were able to pay them to come in and shuck the corn. So you see them shucking the corn. And then we froze it, and we will be able to utilize that for at a later date. So, in this situation, it was actually a win for the farm, a win for the student group, and a win for our nutrition department. So pretty cool example there. Also listed on this slide, these are the 20 items that we procured from local farms and included on our menus over the last 3 months, so just this fall. So I'm excited to say that, in a sense, our program has really grown 20-fold over the last 4 years, going from just purchasing cherry tomatoes to this list of 20 items here. So in conclusion, the Choose Your Own Adventure tool has many benefits, and I would highly recommend, anyone taking the time to review and complete it. Just a few additional things that I really appreciate about the tool are, the fact that it is not a cookie-cutter model. You get to choose your own adventure, truly. School districts are very different, and we all have very different approaches for how we handle things like this. It also allows for self-assessment and really provides you with a picture of where you're at currently and where you should be looking to expand. And then lastly, it digs deeper than just the surface of farm to school. It really opens your eyes to every possible area that is related to farm to school. And, you know, it provides you with so many great resources. As an example, the pictures that you see on this slide contain produce from one of our school gardens. And even though I really didn't focus on school gardens during my presentation today, it is certainly very related to farm to school as well. So I would like to end by saying that farm to school truly is an exciting adventure. I hope that everyone who is participating in this webinar will have the opportunity to utilize the tool and to start, or if you've already started, to expand your farm to school journey very soon. So thank you, and I'm going to hand it back to Lisa.
Great, thank you, Kara. I mean, your stories are so great. It's so inspiring and exciting. So thank you. And I think we'll wind up providing your contact information at the end for those of you who are on the phone and have more questions to understand sort of that growth and that starting small and then moving forward and continuing to grow and partnering with other districts. I think those are all key points. So thank you again. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Mark Lara, who is a member of our Farm to School Task Force and works actually with a number of our LiveWell communities as well. So I'm pleased to introduce Mark and let him share his story from the San Luis Valley.
Thank you, Lisa. Once again, hello from the San Luis Valley, Southern Colorado. We are the highest altitude valley in the world, so we're very fortunate to live here. And as you look at that picture, unfortunately, I don't have many more than that. In fact, I don't have any more than that. But as you look at that picture, it tells pretty much the story of everything that we do here in the San Luis Valley. We are a great school district. We have an opportunity in so many ways to access our community, and we use our community in so many ways. But as you look at that picture, I want you to realize that what we are looking at is, of course, life. And when we deal with life, as we do as food directors, so many times we take for granted what we are really doing and what our job really is. And so in my capacity, I always focus on children. And I look at the children in my district, and I look at children everywhere I go, actually, and I try to find a commonality that we can use to reach them. And the biggest commonality that we share is, as food directors and as parents, friends, and grandparents, we all share food. And food is so important to our daily lives that it's important that we understand what our effect can be on the children of our school districts and our nation as a whole. Some of the things that we're doing here, that picture represents a school garden, which is the flowering tortilla garden here at La Jera Elementary. And it's an elementary of about 210 children. These children went out into this garden, and they all planted one bed. We raised at least 25 different vegetables in this garden, and we did so mainly because the valley, although it's a highly agriculture area, we have very few farmers that will grow vegetables. We have a few that are 1-acre farmers that have broccoli and cauliflower and some of those things. We have huge carrot farms and we have huge potato farms. Of course, San Luis Valley potatoes are known nationwide. So we raise a lot of barley for beer, and we raise a lot of alfalfa for dairies in New Mexico and all over Texas, which is really a good price for those farmers to raise alfalfa. So it's a struggle to try to get someone to actually grow vegetables. But slowly we understand that if we are going to do it, it's going to depend on us. And so I've taken it upon us, meaning myself, my staff, the principals at the elementaries, where I am focusing mainly. Excuse me. So what we did is we established the flowering tortilla garden. Now, the tortilla garden is a story of about a community that didn't really have a lot of things going for it. It was struggling with obesity. It was struggling with physical activity. And at a meeting that these people put together in this community, they brought food, and one of the foods that was discarded was a tortilla full of vegetables, and the next morning, to everyone's amazement, this tortilla had sprouted a huge flower full of different variety of seeds, and the people took this as a sign, and they planted those seeds and created the flowering tortilla garden, which provided vegetables. And the people noticed as they ate these vegetables that their energy returned, and the children became more playful and understanding of what their life and their role as a child really is, and got away from TV and got away from all the electronic gadgets that are available to them today, and they realized that food can have an effect on what they do. So at this garden, the children planted it, real life. You see flowers, you see vegetables. We produced about 1,500 pounds of vegetables out of a garden that is 30 by 100. And to my amazement, everything grew, everything. And it was amazing that the children understood that. And they would come during the summer and they'd gawk at it. And by the time school started, as they walked out around and looked at it, they were amazed. The corn was 12 feet tall, and we have a hard time growing corn in our area. And we had 300 pounds of tomatoes and 600 pounds of pumpkins and squash and calabacitas and peas, and I mean, you name it, it grew. And I was accused of putting steroids in the soil, but unfortunately I didn't have access to that, but I didn't need it. It was the magic of the children's hands as they planted those seeds that actually made this garden grow to its capacity. So I look at what we do as food directors, and I look at the opportunity that we have with Farm to School as a great opportunity to affect children in so many ways, mainly health-wise. And the children, although they have been kind of, I'll say, programmed to enjoy salt, sugar, and fat, it's really hard for them to understand the reality of what a real fresh vegetable tastes like. And I have 2 elementaries in my district, and one didn't have the garden and one did. I have noticed a huge difference in the children and how they participate in our lunch program. When we serve fresh vegetables in the elementary that has the garden, the children enjoy it. They eat it. They talk about it. They bring it to my attention. They bring it to the cook's attention, and they let us know that, hey, I know where this came from. I understand the reality of my effort and how I was rewarded with this great vegetable. And even red beets, it's something that some kids are really afraid to eat things of different color, and red beets have actually been accepted, which is, you know, it's a stretch for all you food directors out there. You understand how hard it is to get children to eat anything besides corn and green beans. You know, it's a tough situation for us, but we can overcome that by education, by showing the children that they have nothing to be afraid of, that colors are the basis for their nutrition, and they need to understand that they can enjoy colors in every area of the vegetable and fruit production. We're at altitude, so we don't get a lot of fruit, but that's something I have a feeling can change. We have found fruit trees from 100 years ago that are still surviving in rural areas and in places that you wouldn't suspect fruit trees to grow. But so we're going to try to cultivate those and bring back the fruits that we do have established here that are, you know, brought, like I said, 100 years ago by settlers that came to the valley and planted in arroyos and places, little canyons that come off the mountains, and they're still surviving. So we're looking to fruits in those areas. As you can see, we had 4 beds that were built by our wood shop here at the high school, and in those beds we planted flowers. And those flowers were used in the classrooms. We cut flowers once a week, and we took them into the teachers' desks, and so they had fresh flowers every week. Because it's not only about growing vegetables, it's about understanding the beauty of being able to raise a plant and what product and what the reward is for raising that plant. And so we had plants of, one planter was full of herbs, and in there we were able to bring those out and let the children smell them, let them taste them, and then we would point them out to them in the soups and the sauces that we produced, and they understood the whole cycle of life. Many times teachers would go out and take plants or take insects and take them back in and study them under the microscope. So they were able to really show the whole cycle of life in a garden setting. The garden was a science lab, it was a kitchen, it was a nutrient center, and it just really created a great environment. Although we don't have a lot of new buildings in our area, I know one of the areas that we struggle with is equipment in our school districts, but because we are a pretty poor, actually we're probably one of the second poorest county in the state, and our kitchens haven't been adapted probably for 40 years, so we still have the same space, we still have old cooking utensils, we still equipment, which actually saved us because we didn't go to a lot of heat and serve. We were able to continue scratch cooking, and I think that's a blessing that we were able to keep. I was very fortunate that when I came on board, I had cooks that had been cooking for 20 years, so their efforts and their knowledge came from 20 years ago when we didn't have so much processed food. And I struggle with processed food because I believe, as many of you do, that processed food is the root of all our trouble. It's just wrong for us, and I just feel that Farm to School is going to be a food director's opportunity to get away from processed food. We have an opportunity to grow our communities in so many ways. We can grow them economically. I was talking to a gentleman in northern New Mexico who has a small 1-acre farm, and he produces $70,000 worth of vegetables on 1 acre. To me, that's amazing because we don't have the wherewithal to really get after it and go after producing something. And if we look at it from an economic standpoint, we have some great opportunities. Somebody's having a fire. Excuse me. So what I want to finish up here with is just about something that's very important to all of us, and I think it's love. It's the love of the dirt. You know, we have to love the producers out there. We have to love those people that wear torn pants, not because it's fashionable, but we have to love them because their pants are torn because they work so hard. They're up and down. We have to love the producers' hands that are cracked and dried, and know that they're strong, and because they produce for us. We have to love them because their skin is tanned and because they just don't have the opportunities to stay indoors, which is great for them. I'm so proud that they're able to do that. So we have to love producers. We have to love the land in order to bring it back to its original state. We have to get rid of all the pesticides and all the fertilizers that we've been using to kill our soil. So it's a basic thing in our community that we can change. We have the ability to change what goes on in our communities, and we need to take advantage of that. And what we have in our back pocket that nobody else has, what we have in our hearts that nobody else, mostly everybody else, takes for granted is the children. And the children are our driving force. The children will create, they keep us young in so many ways, but yet we need to keep them healthy, and it is our charge to do that. So if we are able to establish a farm-to-school network, statewide, nationwide, worldwide, where we can reestablish the growing of local crops, we will change our children's life. We will give them a healthier life. We will change our economics. It is just so important that we pursue this. If you haven't started a farm-to-school project in your area, please look at it. Take a strong look at it. Talk to a local farmer. Start with one item. So far, we have not had a lot of opportunity to get a lot of produce from our local producers, but by doing the flowering tortilla garden, it opened so many eyes in our community that people now are on board. They either want to be a part of the flowering tortilla garden next season, or they are going to attempt to grow something on their own because they realize the importance of healthy, locally grown, a sustainable food system that will give our children and us better life, more energy, and just help us to make a more communal setting for our families. Schools have become the center of communities in so many ways, so it's important that school districts establish that and take that role and run with it in order to make sure that their community is on board and willing to sacrifice. We are very fortunate in our community to have generous people. We did this garden for no cost to the school district, and it was all donated. And granted, it didn't take a lot of money. It took a little bit of equipment, but it's not a hard thing to do. Don't be afraid to step out, look at your schoolyard, look at your playground, look at your old football field, and maybe you're going to find a space there where you can do that. After we establish the standards that we need from farmers, and after those are all clear-cut and understood by producers as well as consumers, we'll be able to establish networks into all institutions, all the hospitals, all the nursing homes, all those things that are just waiting to be touched by the farm to school and farm to table. It's an opportunity that's so beautiful that I just want to really stress that it is the love that we have for our children, the love for our communities, the love for each other, and the love that we have in our jobs that makes us strong and will keep us as a viable part of our community. And in the end run, we reduce children obesity, we reduce their health problems, we reduce diabetes, we reduce all the things that are affecting our communities in a negative way. And I truly believe that food is the root of all evil, but is also the precious ingredient that's going to change us. So food is both good, food is both bad, but we need to encourage each other, work with each other, and provide a sustaining food system that will feed schools and institutions and eventually grocery stores. I'm sure they're going to have to buy in sooner or later. And we need to get rid of processed food. Stop ordering processed food. That is so crazy that we do that. So
we make sure we hear from our other speaker. Your passion.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Your passion and your love and commitment to this it just jumps out of the phone, and I think it's so inspirational to so many. And one thing I'd like to underscore is just that importance of engaging kids. That's a crucial part of the farm to school movement, and making sure that we're successful in getting kids to eat. So thinking of yourselves as lunch teachers. So with that, thank you again, Mark. And next we've got Shelley.
Thank you.
And Shelley has stories to share from the St. Vrain Valley School District. So Shelley?
Good afternoon. Thank you. Well, one of the things about St. Vrain Valley School District is that is very exciting. It's a small school district up in the northern area of Colorado with about 26,000 students, and we have really reaped the benefits of farm-to-school partnerships. In 2008 and 2009, we started out with a small farmer purchasing about $5,000 worth of squash and peppers and cucumbers. And this year, we have purchased close to $70,000 in farm-to-school product that directly comes from farmers within a 5-mile radius of our school district. So we're real proud of that. Some of the things, next slide please, some of the things that we want to really look at when we start a farm-to-school program is what does it mean to you as an organization or to a school district, and why do it? For us, it was really important that it have the community involvement. So what were other farm-to-school programs doing around the country? We investigated that. We looked to see the impact on the schools. We wanted to make sure to see who we needed to involve to make that school program successful. And then what were the challenges? And then how do we get school food services integrated into local farm-to-school programs and make it a priority in our school district. Next slide, please. So we looked at who needed to be involved to create the successful school program. And what we did is we looked at a whole group of people. And the first thing that we did was that your tool really focuses on, and that's in section 5, 6, and 9, is who were the major players in a farm-to-school program. Next slide, please. So we really wanted to involve the food service staff, and we looked at what were the staff out there that are going to be able to manage the farm-to-school product, and what was it going to cost. You heard in Greeley School Districts that she talked about how did they make that work with partnering with different groups and operations. And we looked at what was the participation going to be, how were kids going to be involved, and how were our employees going to be involved. We looked at suppliers who were our local farmers. And this year we bid out with Greeley School Districts, and we had 3 major farms. One on the western slope that provided peaches, pears, and apples to us. And then right down the street from us, we partnered with a local organic farm, 900-acre farm, and we were able to really work very closely with what they had available from week to week, and then that's what we looked to purchase. And then we had to really educate our school administrators. A lot of times we have that connotation that, you know, school meals aren't healthy. And so we really had to go back and say, you know, that produce was coming from right down the street, or it was coming from the western slope. We had to let teachers know. We had to really educate parents and the school board as to the importance of that partnership with the farm-to-school partners. And then, of course, we had to look at the seasonal piece of the climate. We had one farm pull out because of the weather, and couldn't provide all of the produce that we needed. And then the other farm was able to step up and to do that. You always have to have that plan B no matter what. And in that plan B, you also have the availability to really identify to your vendor, if I can't get this locally from the farmer down the street, then I want you to be able to provide at least Colorado grown or regionally grown produce. So we built that into our RFPs when we put it out there for bid, and we held them accountable to identifying where that produce was coming from. And then you had to have community support, because a lot of times the person that you least educate can be your most important advocate. And when parents find out that produce is being grown locally, their whole persona of your meal program changes. They identify that, wow, they're paying attention to what's going on out there. And then we looked at volunteers and helping to accommodate how we got that produce into our schools and from our central warehouse. And then we looked at project coordination. And we really focused our farm-to-school program in partnership with our school wellness program. And our school wellness program is funded by LiveWell Colorado. And so we built that into our wellness policy. And our wellness policy went from 1 page to a 7-page wellness policy, where we identified that our goal was to increase the consumption of fruits and vegetables in our schools. It was to help provide school gardens for our schools, and was really to make the whole gardening process a real educational piece. Next slide, please. So what are the challenges? Well, first, time. Farm-to-school programs take a lot of time, and you're not usually dealing with just one vendor. During the summer this year, we actually had 5 vendors at one point where we were getting produce, and it takes a lot of time on the staff that is out there putting the bids out and purchasing the food, and then those people that are in our warehouse, and how do they distribute it, and all the vendors coming in, and what goes where, and they have to really learn the rotation of the produce. Then we have to look at supply and volume, because sometimes we just didn't have enough that came in. It was interesting, though, is that when we said we needed more cucumbers or peppers or whatever, we were able to just call up, and our farmer, she was able to provide us with those products, or increase the volume for the next week, or change to a different product. We had to be pretty open to variety and quality of the product. A lot of times when in our bids, we would put grade A, or it had to be a certain quality of product. And then once we started looking and educating ourselves, there was an opportunity for us to use seconds or slightly blemished if we were peeling and cleaning the produce. In the melon time, when melon became available to us, instead of us just ordering cantaloupe, we ordered variety melon because our farmer was actually producing a variety of different melons for local restaurants that they had asked for. So instead of us just getting a cantaloupe or a honeydew, she was able to put a large variety of different melons in, and we bought it by the pound. And so that case came, and kids were exposed to a multitude of different melons that we wouldn't have ordered on a regular basis from a vendor. We would have been very precise of staying cantaloupe, honeydew, and watermelon. And then we had to look at consistency, and as I said about the seconds, there were a lot of times like cucumbers were crooked or zucchini was crooked. Well, we were actually able to utilize squash that was still really good vegetables on the inside and maybe was a little deformed because we were cutting it and slicing it and dicing it and cutting it into sticks on a regular basis. And we had to look at distribution because when those products came in, how did they come into the warehouse, and how were my warehouse staff going to be able to distribute that produce? Watermelon came in burlap sacks one year, and how did we talk that through with the farmer, and how did we get that out to the schools so that the product wasn't damaged at all? And then we had to find local growers. When we started our partnership with other school districts 4 years ago, we started with growers, and everybody left the first year thinking we couldn't do this, we couldn't provide. But at different times of the year, in the last 4 years, growers have been able to come to us and say, we have produce for you and we want to participate in your program. And we can only provide it to small school districts, or we can only provide this certain amount. And we were able to use those products, and we were able to say, you know what, we'll take a small amount from you and a small amount from someone else. And as long as you can meet the certain criteria that we need. Next slide, please. So how do we overcome some of the challenges with the distribution? We increase the number of distributors that we work with, and we work with specialty, regional, or general produce distributors so that you always have a plan B, and you tell them that you're going to want local grown produce when it's in season, and you hold them accountable to that. And you work with those big vendors such as Cisco, Andrews, and U.S. Foods to include that mid-scale grower, someone who might not always be able to provide to these companies, but you specify, you know, that you want them to do that. And they have to go out a lot of times to some of the mid-sized growers to be able to meet the demand of the school districts. Next slide, please. And then you have to overcome the challenges in how we educate people. We have to be able to create curriculum for our students, chefs, and buyers so that they feel of the buy-in and the enthusiasm for the Farm to School program. We create opportunities for them to be creative and to use the products in a lot of different ways. So sometimes there's recipe contests going on, and sometimes there's being able to mix vegetables together to provide different those recipes, and also to educate kids on what that is so that it looks different. And not just the students in the school, but actually the staff. A lot of times they haven't seen what's some of the vegetables that they received or the produce that they had received in the school. And we bring in outside people to do that. A lot of our vendors will really provide opportunities to come in and show you how to create different things for kids that are really tasty, and you have to be open to that. Conduct farm-to-school tours, invite farmers to your lunch to be able to meet the kids, create handbooks and online materials so that there's resources for parents, and really look at creating your menus based on the season and availability of farm-to-school products or produce. Some of the things that you have to be able to do is you have to, next slide please, You have to be open to change. You cannot just think that it's going to be a simple task. And it's not like it has been in years past where we just order from the produce company. And you have to tap into the potential of who's out there. Look for quality, look for seconds, look for local support, and create those community connections. Build the partnerships. That's what's going to make your farm-to-school program successful. And really build your team of staff and teachers, students, parents, and community members, vendors, and, to support your endeavor. People like some of our biggest supporters, LiveWell Colorado Health Foundation. All of these outside entities have been able to offer us opportunities to support the farm-to-school program. And even the school districts, as we partner with each other, we work together to make each other successful. None of us want to see us fail, and they want us to be able to provide healthy meals for kids. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shelley, and thank you to all of our on-the-ground storytellers. You really are inspirational, and I think there is a consistent and clear message there about passion for kids, passion for healthy foods, and being persistent, starting small, and moving forward. With that, I want to hand it over to Wendy Peters, who's going to provide a little more information about how you can get involved.
Hi there. Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Kara, Mark, and Shelley. I love listening to you all, and I totally feel the love, Mark, so this is really exciting to hear. So you can move to the next slide. I just wanted to very quickly flag a few additional resources, some that have already been mentioned in this call, that we would like all of you who are on this webinar today to use, and to feel that you can approach us and work with us with some of these tools. So a couple of things that I want to flag first that we have developed with Colorado Farm to School. And as was introduced early on in the webinar, Colorado Farm to School is staffed by myself, Lynn Kathleen, that you heard from, and Jim Dyer, who was also listening in on this webinar today. And although you just heard sort of the best how-tos you ever could from our speakers today, a couple of things that we have on coloradofarmtoschool.org. Obviously, the school district review tool that Lynn walked through in detail is up there and ready to use. A few other things that we are trying to populate this website with as many models and tools and resources and best practices as we can to really help highlight and share and disseminate all of the good work that you all are doing around the state and help diffuse that and get it to each other. So one thing that's up there is really extensive how-to guides, and it's several pages of links to existing online resources that are just broken down to all sorts of different ideas, sort of your most common questions that we get about, you know, how to find producers, how to get the kids involved, how to build educational programs, you know, how to buy and use local food. So it's full of links how-to resources. One other thing to mention, these case studies, if you look under resources for schools on our website, we have, I think it's 7 or 8 really beautiful case studies, including several of the speakers you've heard from today, that highlight specific issues that districts have taken on, whether it be food safety or school gardens, and how they've developed those programs within their schools. So this is really all to say that we want people to use our website, use those tools, but also that Lynn and Jim and I are here as your technical assistance providers. However beautifully developed the school district review tool is, it really is developed to be a self-used and directed tool. There may be times when, as a food service director, it's just helpful to have some technical assistance, you know, someone to walk through it with you and to talk through it with you, or to brainstorm about how to use these tools to engage the rest of your district. And that's what we're here for. So this is also just sort of saying, we're here for you. Our contact information is on the next slide. So the next slide says a couple of resources. We are resources. All of these speakers, LiveWell Colorado, Colorado Farm to School. So this webinar, which you will get instructions about, will be posted up on LiveWell Colorado's website. So you will see this slide, contact information, resources for you to use. Next slide, please. And just one last thing to flag is that as part of our technical assistance through Colorado Farm to School and our commitment to really raising up the really good practices that you all are already doing. This is one of a series of webinars, and so we just want to flag some of the ones that are coming up. So you'll see these listed here. Every time we announce a webinar, we will always include this list so you kind of know what's coming. The webinars here will happen throughout into the spring and probably early summer of 2012. The very next one is Wednesday, December 14th from 2 to 3 p.m. You will be getting an announcement. We're very excited to say that Colorado Market Maker, if you haven't seen it, Google it, Colorado Market Maker. It's a product of Colorado State University and Colorado Department of Agriculture. It's a beautiful online inventory, a way for producers and businesses that sell and produce and process Colorado products and buyers to find each other. And they've built in some new applications very recently for farm to school, for schools to be able to go in and register as buyers, buyer businesses, and find producers to work with. So we will be highlighting those new tools at our next webinar. And last slide, we just like to close with a quote that we sort of bring into all of our webinars now to just end on, is that the message we keep hearing is that celebrate what you've done no matter how small. These things start small. Kara demonstrated that very well, and they can get very big very fast. So good luck to all of you. And thanks for your time, and I hope we have a few minutes for a couple questions.
We do. Thank you to all of our presenters. We are going to open it up for questions now. So just as a reminder, to ask questions, you can simply type it into the tab on your on-screen control panel. And if possible, please mention to whom you are directing your question. And as Wendy just said and I said earlier, this recording will be available on LiveWell Colorado's website tomorrow morning. And to access the recording, simply visit about.livewellcolorado.org, visit the toolbox, and select Webinars in the toolbox menu. So with that, if you want to start typing in your questions, we can have our presenters start answering all of your questions. So I'll give it just a moment for the questions to come in. Okay, we have a question. How long do you expect the school district review tool to take to complete? And once complete, does it provide any sort of analysis or recommendations?
Oh, well, thank you, Jan. Those are great questions. The review tool is actually quite extensive, but it's broken up into 9 sections, and each of the sections really are standalone. And the idea behind that was that any given school district is going to be at a different place in where they're doing their efforts, and so you really can sit down and just say, you know, right now I just need to figure out what my budget looks like, or I need to figure out, you know, how do I engage stakeholders, who are the other people that need to be part of it. So I don't actually have a good answer to say how long would it take from, you know, page 1 to the end, because we haven't done it that way. I think everybody kind of uses it in the pieces they need for that moment. So having said that, let me try to answer your other question, which is it really isn't for an analysis. It's really not data that goes anywhere. It's just information that you can collect and keep for yourself. It organizes your thoughts and helps you understand what your capacity is to take on farm to school, where you're at farm to school. And so the recommendations really come from looking at that information you've collected and then saying, oh, okay, I'm going to link onto this resource in this section, and it's going to help me figure out what to do next.
Okay, we have another question in here. So it seems like it depends on the food service director. If they're willing, it can happen, and if they're not, it won't. What is out there to encourage reluctant directors who maybe think it is breaking food safety rules to obtain local produce? And that's from Liza.
That's a great question, Liza. This is Lynn, and I'm also going to let Wendy join in on the answer to this one. You know, part of it is building the support of your allies and really figuring out who your allies are. And so that's an important component. But there's also, and this is really exciting, there's a lot of new material that's starting to come out, and it's not quite available yet. Some is, but some isn't. But literally, we're getting created down in Durango just last week through Rio Food Colorado and the Durango School District that are creating food safety handling standards and good handling practices that meet the needs of the food service directors and the producers. And so those kinds of tools are coming out, and they will be available on our website soon.
Now we have another question, and this one is directed to Kara, and it's from Sharon. The question is, how do you ensure that surplus purchases made from local farmers are consistent with procurement rules? Kara, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
We can.
Okay. Sorry, I think I blipped out there for a second. So I would actually, and I don't know if this is possible, want to pose a question back to Sharon in terms of what exactly she's referring to.
So Sharon, if you want to respond to that, if you want to type in to what you're referring to, and then I can let everybody know.
I'm guessing it might be food safety, and if so, we might have just answered it previously.
We'll give Sharon just a moment. Okay, we have another question coming in from Jan, and the question is, what sort of support is available from the state for farm to school? You mentioned Department of Agriculture at one point. Any others, and how do we connect with them?
Wendy, would you like to take that one?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I can.
I think the good news here is that you're seeing a lot of emerging leadership from multiple state agencies, primarily the Colorado Department of Public Health, the Colorado Department of Agriculture, and the Colorado Department of Education. So they're all going to offer fairly different resources. Colorado Department of Public Health, for example, and Environment has helped to fund and put staff in place for an excellent statewide resource, which is the Farm to School Task Force, which Lynn actually staffs, so Lynn can talk more about that. But one thing that the Colorado Department of Agriculture, you know, they have the Colorado Market Maker is a tool that they're improving on an ongoing basis in partnership with CSU. So I'd encourage you to get on to our next webinar that will dive deep into how to use Colorado Market Maker to connect schools and producers. In addition, through their Markets Division and the Colorado Proud Program and Colorado Proud School Meal Day, they have extensive tools on the Department of Agriculture's website about integrating local foods and running things like Colorado Proud School Meal Day. And we did have a Colorado Proud School Meal Day webinar back in August, which is archived on LiveWell's website. And the Colorado Department of Education, their head of nutrition is increasingly involved in Farm to School. She sits on the Farm to School Task Force. She sits on the Food Systems Advisory Council, another state-level council, and also CDE. I am really excited to announce recently hired a new staff within the nutrition unit that will act as other nutrition unit staff does, and they will do the now 3-year monitoring of school districts and conduct assessments, but a chunk of her time is specifically devoted to listening to and supporting and learning about advancing farm to school in the state of Colorado. So I hope I got that somewhat correct. But I think you're seeing institutionalization and support for farm to school in all of our agencies, and I'm not sure if I addressed your specific question about what exact resources, but things are moving in a great direction, I think.
Okay, and now Sharon provided some clarification for her earlier question, and she said, what I'm referring to is when you have placed your bid and made the purchase and then realized that there are surplus foods available. How do you then purchase from the farmer? Do you go out for a new bid, or do you just buy the surplus from a farmer because it's available?
All right, thank you. That makes more sense. So we actually, and again, this might be different from how other school districts work. Here in Greeley, we actually bid out our conventional, so our non-farm to school produce on a weekly basis. So we are not really tied in for an extended amount of time or required to make certain purchases from those providers. So that makes it very easy for us, you know, when there is surplus available, that we can easily take advantage of that.
Okay.
And I would like to add, this is Lynn again, and just following up on what Wendy was saying about the Farm to School Task Force. The task force is really just 1 year old, actually. They're just about to come up to their first year anniversary, and they are putting out many different resources. And one of those actually gets back to a nice FAQ that's been created coming out of the task force through CDPHE that addresses local procurement, or local preferences, I should say. And so that gets back to an earlier question: how do you make sure that you are, you know, staying in line with the guidelines and still being able to procure locally? And so we've got some wonderful resources that are coming out, and in fact that one will be put up on the Colorado Farm to School website by tomorrow. Because we just got our finalized pieces. And I say keep checking back, and you will soon see a very exciting new, what we call, information hub about all things farm to school. So we're going to be transitioning our current website into a very highly functional and interactive website. Thank you.
So we're going to give just another minute. If there are any last-minute questions, please go ahead and ask them now. Okay, well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions coming in, so we're going to wrap up today's webinar. I'd like to thank all of our presenters for giving us wonderful information and sharing their passion with us. And thank you all for listening. And just as a reminder, this will be available tomorrow on LiveWell Colorado's website. Thanks so much.